The auction of fear. The marketplace was louder than thunder, filled with voices of 100 different alien tongues. Strange shapes moved through the smoke-filled air, creatures with 4 arms, scales instead of skin, and eyes that glowed like burning coals. The smell of fire oil and blood floated everywhere. It was not a place for peace. It was a place of trade. But not for gold, not for jewels. It was a place where lives were sold. On the main stage stood a figure unlike any other. Shackled in chains thicker than starship cables, a giantess towered above the crowd. Her skin was pale silver, her hair long and black, and her body was built with terrifying power. Every movement of her arms made the chains rattle like the sound of war drums. The auctioneer, a thin creature with 3 mouths and sharp fangs, shouted for attention. His voice echoed across the crowd. Behold, a giant of the lost war breed. Too big to control, too wild to keep, too strong to breed. But perfect for the slaughterhouse. Who dares to claim her flesh? The crowd roared. Alien merchants lifted their claws, their hands, their tendrils. Prices were shouted like weapons in battle. 200 credits for her head. 500 for her bones. 1,000 for her heart. Our kings eat the hearts of giants for strength. The giantess stood silent. Her cold eyes stared beyond the crowd, not at anyone, not at anything. Her expression showed no fear, no anger, only emptiness. She had seen this before. She knew what was waiting for her, death. Chains held her arms. Shackles cut deep into her ankles. And yet the crowd still trembled whenever she moved. Even broken, even bound, she was still terrifying to look at. But among the hundreds of alien eyes, one pair of human eyes did not look with fear or hunger. Captain Darius stood at the edge of the marketplace. His ship was small, his money weaker than most. He wore a worn-out jacket, his face covered in dust from long travels. He did not belong here. Humans rarely came to this black market, and when they did, they never left in peace. He had not planned to come for her. He came searching for supplies, fuel, maybe a small job to keep his ship alive. But when he saw her standing there, silent and broken, something inside him changed. She was not just a body to him. She was not food. She was alive. The auctioneer bared his fangs. 1,000. Do I hear more? 2,000. A merchant with golden scales hissed and raised his hand. Another with cybernetic arms shouted over him. The numbers climbed higher, faster, like fire racing through dry wood. Darius clenched his fists. His mind screamed at him to walk away. This was madness. He had no reason to care. She was not human, not his problem. If he spent his money here, he would lose everything. His ship, his safety, maybe even his life. But his heart whispered something else. If he did nothing, she would be carved apart. Her flesh eaten, her bones burned, her memory erased. She would vanish like she never existed, and he could not let that happen. The auctioneer raised all 3 of his hands. 3,000 credits. Going once. The crowd cheered. The golden-scaled merchant licked his lips in hunger. Going twice. Darius's voice broke the air. 4,000. The marketplace went silent. Every head turned. Dozens of alien eyes locked on the human who had dared to speak. Darius felt the weight of their stares heavy as mountains. He knew they thought him insane. A human with no power, no wealth, no army, bidding on a giantess meant for slaughter. The auctioneers' mouths curled into something like a grin. 4,000. From the human. Do I hear more? But the silence was unbroken. The crowd muttered, confused. None wanted to outbid, not because they feared Darius, but because they could not understand him. Why would he waste his credits on her? What use did a fragile human have for a beast like this? Going once, the auctioneer shouted. Going twice. The giantess finally moved. Slowly, she turned her head, and for the first time her eyes focused. She looked at him. Deep, sharp questioning. Her stare felt like a blade pressed to his chest. Darius did not look away. He held her gaze. He wanted her to see that he was not like the others, that he did not see her as food, sold. The auctioneer roared. To the foolish human. The crowd erupted in laughter, in anger, in confusion. Merchants spat on the ground, hunters muttered threats, others shook their heads. Darius handed over every credit he had. His heart raced like a drum. The chains around the giantess rattled as she was dragged toward him. Each step shook the stage. The guards looked nervous. Even chained, she was dangerous. When she finally stood before him, towering like a living mountain, the air grew colder. She looked down at him, silent, her face unreadable. The crowd whispered, "The human will not last long. He bought death with his own money. Fool. Dead fool." But Darius only took a breath and said softly, "You're free now." Her eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. Above them the suns burned red, and the hunters of the market began to follow them with hungry eyes. And so it began. The story of one human, one giantess, and a decision that would shake the stars. The human's decision, the deal was done. The marketplace returned to its noise, but the whispers never stopped. Everywhere Captain Darius walked, he felt the eyes. Hunters, traders, smugglers, every one of them watched him now. Some with laughter, some with disgust, and some with the kind of hunger that meant danger. The human bought the giantess. He thinks she's a pet? No. He thinks he can save her. Darius ignored the voices. He led the way through the crowd as guards pulled the giantess forward, her chains heavy against the stone floor. She moved without resistance, yet each step felt like the ground itself was trembling. Her shadow covered him, long and cold. For a moment he almost doubted himself. What had he done? His credits gone. His ship barely working. His life now marked by every alien here. All because he couldn't walk away from her. The guards shoved the giantess toward the loading bay. The chains scraped the ground, the sound sharp like knives. Her head remained high, her face expressionless. She never looked at him again, not once since the auction stage. The auctioneer approached, grinning with three mouths. His long fingers tapped against Darius's chest. "Human," he hissed. "Do you know what you've bought? That creature is not a slave, not a servant. She cannot breed, she cannot work. She exists only to be killed. She will ruin you." Darius met his glowing eyes and said nothing. The auctioneer leaned closer, whispering so only Darius could hear. "Sell her back now before it's too late. I will even return half your credits. Walk away with your life." Darius's jaw tightened. His answer was simple. "No." The alien's three mouths curled downward, disgusted. "Then your death will be your own doing." He spat and turned away. The chains rattled again. The giantess was pulled toward his small starship. Other merchants laughed as they watched. A few shook their heads, already guessing how this would end. At the base of the loading ramp, Darius gave the order. "Remove her chains." The guards froze. "What, are you mad?" "She's mine now," Darius said firmly. "Remove them." The guards exchanged uneasy looks. One of them shook his head. "If we take these off, she'll kill you before you even lift off." Darius stepped forward. His voice was calm but sharp as steel. "The chains come off." With clear reluctance, the guards obeyed. The heavy cuffs fell from her wrists. The ankle restraints snapped open. For the first time in years, perhaps, the giantess stood unbound. The crowd gasped. Some expected her to crush him on the spot. Others backed away in fear, but she did not move. She only stood tall, her eyes fixed on nothing, as if she had already left this place in her mind. Darius walked up the ramp and glanced back. "Come," he said. Slowly, she followed. The starship lifted from the ground, leaving the black market behind in smoke and fire. Inside, the silence was heavy. The giantess sat on the floor of the cargo bay, knees bent, head bowed. She took up half the space like a living mountain of flesh and power. Darius sat across from her, his blaster resting on his lap. For a long time, he said nothing. She said nothing. The engines hummed. Finally, he broke the silence. "You don't have to be afraid. I didn't buy you to sell you. You're free now." Her eyes, cold as ice, lifted slowly. They met his, and for the first time she spoke. Her voice was deep, rough, but carried a strange sadness. "Free?" Darius nodded. "Yes, free." She tilted her head, studying him like he was the strange one. "Free to what? To starve, to hide, to be hunted?" Her lips curled slightly. "Freedom means nothing when every star burns against you." Darius felt the weight of her words. He wanted to argue, but he couldn't. He knew she was right. Already he imagined the whispers racing across the black market, across the galaxy. A human had stolen their prize. A human had broken the rules. They would not let this go. "You could have left me," she said softly. "Why didn't you?" He leaned back, his hand gripping the blaster tighter. "Because no one else would." Her eyes narrowed as if searching his soul for weakness, for lies. What she found there, even she did not understand. For a moment, silence again. Then the ship jolted. The warning alarm screamed. Darius leapt to the controls. No, already?" He slammed the buttons, but the sensors told the truth. Ships were behind them. Hunters. They had followed. Through the cockpit window, stars bent around the engines of alien vessels, small, fast, deadly. Their lights glowed red like hungry eyes. The Giantess rose to her feet, her head nearly brushing the ceiling. Her gaze locked on the hunters outside. Darius's heart pounded. His ship was not built for war. He could run, but not far. He could fight, but not win. He looked at her, the one he had saved, the one who might yet kill him. And in that moment, he wondered if he had chosen freedom for her, or death for them both. The silent Giantess, the ship's alarms echoed like a heartbeat gone wild. Red lights washed the small cockpit in a harsh glow as Darius forced his old vessel into a sharp dive. The metal groaned, the engines spat fire, but the hunters behind them never slowed. Through the glass, 3 enemy ships closed in, sharp as blades cutting across the stars. Their crimson lights glared like hungry eyes. They had not come for credits. They had come for blood. Darius's hands flew across the controls. "Come on, old girl. Don't fail me now." His voice was tight, desperate. He knew his ship was too slow, too weak, too broken to fight. In the cargo bay, the Giantess stood silent, her massive body swaying with each violent turn. Chains no longer bound her, yet she had not moved against him. She simply watched. Darius shouted over the alarm, "Strap down or they'll toss us into the void." She did not answer. She did not even blink. He cursed under his breath. Of course. Silent as the grave, the ship shuddered as the first hunter fired. A bolt of plasma grazed the hull, turning metal red hot. The control panel screamed warnings. "Shields at 60%. Darius gritted his teeth. "If we don't make a jump soon, they'll cut us into pieces." Then, for the first time since the auction, the Giantess moved. Her head tilted toward the window, her silver eyes narrowing. She walked forward, her footsteps heavy but steady until she stood beside Darius in the cockpit. Even hunched, she filled the space, her presence pressing against him like a storm. She looked out at the hunters. Then she spoke, her deep voice low and calm. "They will not stop." Darius glanced at her, sweat on his brow. I noticed. Her gaze shifted to him. "Why run, human? You cannot win." He shot her a quick glare. "Because I'm not ready to die yet, you?" For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. A ghost of a memory. A whisper of pain. She turned away. "I have been ready for a long time." Her words chilled him, but there was no time to argue. Another blast struck the shields, shaking the ship so hard Darius's teeth rattled. The Giantess reached out suddenly. Her massive hand closed around the console, metal creaking under her strength. "Open the bay doors." Darius stared at her. "What?" "Open them," she repeated, her voice sharper now. "You'll be sucked out into space." He snapped. She leaned closer, her breath heavy, her eyes burning with something he could not name. "Trust me." Darius hesitated. Every instinct screamed this was madness. But then again, wasn't buying her madness too? And yet here he was. With a growl, he slammed the command. The cargo bay doors opened. Warning lights screamed louder, cold air rushing out into the void. The Giantess stepped back, her hair whipping around her like a dark storm. She bent low, her muscles flexing, her gaze fixed on the ships outside. And then, she leapt. The human ship rocked as her enormous body shot out into the black. Darius gripped the controls, his mouth falling open. "What in the name of stars?" Outside, her body glowed faintly, armored skin catching starlight. The hunters turned their weapons on her, firing shot after shot. Bolts of energy slammed into her flesh, but she did not fall. She did not bleed. She struck the first ship with her bare hands. Metal screamed. The vessel split in two, flames spilling out like blood in the dark. The second hunter swerved, too slow. She caught it by the wing, twisting until the engine exploded. Fire painted the black sky. The third fled, engines burning bright, desperate to escape the monster it had tried to hunt. Darius sat frozen, hands trembling on the controls. He had seen battles before. He had seen soldiers fight, machines clash, fleets burn. But never had he seen power like this. When the silence of space finally returned, he whispered to himself, "What are you?" Minutes later, the cargo bay doors closed. The alarms fell silent, and there she was again, stepping back into the ship. Her chest rose and fell, but her face was unreadable. Not triumph. Not pride. Only emptiness. Darius stood from the cockpit, meeting her in the bay. His voice shook. You tore them apart. With your hands. She looked down at him, silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, each word heavy. That is what I was made for. He swallowed hard. Made by who? Her eyes darkened, shadows flickering across her face. By those who now want me dead. They built us for war, then feared us, then tried to erase us. Her voice dropped lower, a whisper like thunder. I am the last. The truth settled like ice in Darius's chest. He had not rescued just a giantess. He had rescued the final remnant of a forgotten army. But before he could speak, her gaze snapped to the window again. They will come again, she said. Darius frowned. More hunters. She nodded slowly. They will never stop. Not while I live. The weight of her words pressed on him. He realized then the choice he had made was not a simple rescue. It was war. By saving her, he had painted a target not only on her back but on his. And as the ship drifted into the dark between stars, Darius knew there was no turning back. A monster or a friend. The ship drifted in silence after the battle. Stars glittered coldly outside the viewport, far and unreachable. Inside, only the soft hum of engines remained. Captain Darius sat in the cockpit, his hands still shaking from what he had seen. The images played again and again in his mind. The giantess tearing through steel and fire as if the hunters were made of paper. Her hands could crush a ship, her arms could break metal. Her body ignored plasma fire, and now she was on his ship. In the cargo bay, Queenorix sat in the shadows. She had not moved since returning, not spoken a single word. Her massive figure rested with her knees bent, head low, as if she carried the weight of entire worlds on her shoulders. Darius stared through the glass for a long while, then stood and walked to her. Every step echoed louder than it should have, his boots tapping against the thin floor. When he entered the bay, he hesitated at the doorway. She looked like a sleeping god, too big, too silent. Part of him wanted to run back to the cockpit and lock the door, but he forced his voice to steady. You saved us back there. Her head tilted slightly, but she did not raise her eyes. I saved myself. Darius frowned. Could have fooled me. Looked like you could have left me floating in space if you wanted. Finally, her eyes opened, glowing faintly in the dim light. They locked on him, sharp and unreadable. You think I cannot? His throat went dry. Her words cut like a blade. He forced a weak smile. Not saying you can't, just saying you didn't. For a long moment, silence pressed between them. Then Queenorix spoke again, her voice low. Why do you keep me human? Do you not fear me? Darius swallowed and leaned against the wall, trying to look casual, though his heart thundered in his chest. Of course I fear you. Any man with sense would. But fear doesn't mean I'll throw you away. Her gaze narrowed as if testing his words. You fear me, yet you freed me? Yeah, he said softly. Because fear isn't the same as hate. She turned her face slightly, her expression unreadable. For a moment, she looked less like a monster and more like someone lost. Hours passed. The ship floated through quiet space, carrying its unlikely passengers. Darius returned to the cockpit, but he could feel her presence even behind the walls, heavy as gravity itself. He told himself he wasn't watching her, but his eyes flicked to the cargo bay cameras every few minutes. She didn't move. Not once. When sleep finally pressed against his eyes, he set the ship on autopilot and dozed in the pilot's chair. He woke to silence, but a different kind. Too quiet, his instincts screamed. His hand darted for his blaster, and there she was. Queenorix stood in the cockpit, towering over him, her shadow swallowing him whole. Her silver eyes glowed faintly in the dark. She had moved without sound, without warning. His finger twitched near the trigger. His heart hammered so loud he thought she could hear it. Why are you here? He asked, voice low. Her gaze dropped to the weapon in his hand. She tilted her head, almost curious. You think that will stop me? Darius forced a thin laugh. Maybe not, but it makes me feel better. Her eyes lingered on him for what felt like an eternity. Then she spoke, quieter than before. I asked you once, why save me? Tell me the truth. His throat tightened. He didn't have a clever answer this time. Only the truth, because when I saw you on that stage, you looked the same way I once did. Her brow furrowed, the faintest crack in her stone-like mask. How? Darius exhaled slowly. Trapped, alone, waiting for someone to decide if I lived or died. The silence stretched. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. Her great chest rose and fell with a deep, slow breath. Finally, she whispered, "No one has ever spoken to me like this." Darius lowered the blaster. His hand still shook, but he placed it on the console instead of the trigger. Maybe no one ever tried. For the first time, her gaze softened. Just slightly. Like a storm cloud breaking for a single ray of sun. But before either could say more, the ship's sensors beeped. A faint ping. Then another. Darius spun toward the screen. His stomach sank. "No, no, no!" The display lit with dots. Not 3 hunters this time. Dozens. An entire fleet spreading through space like a net. Kalira leaned forward, her voice a growl. "They have found us again." Darius's jaw tightened. "They don't give up easy, do they?" Her eyes burned with cold fire. "They never will." And in that moment, Darius realized something terrifying. He had freed her, but he might have also doomed them both. The hunt begins. The stars were no longer quiet. They burned red with warning. On the cockpit screen, dozens of enemy ships appeared one by one, closing in like wolves circling prey. Their formation was tight, their engines flaring bright. These were not random hunters anymore. This was a fleet, organized, hungry. Darius's stomach twisted. This is impossible. How can they keep finding us? Beside him, Kalira stood tall, her head nearly brushing the ceiling. Her voice was low, steady. "They were built to hunt my kind. They will not stop." Darius slammed the controls, pushing his ship into a sharp turn. The engines screamed, the frame rattled, but the hunters closed the gap easily. His ship was an insect compared to theirs. Plasma fire cut across the black. Bolts slammed into the shields, shaking the cockpit with each impact. Warning alarms blared. "Shields down to 50%, Darius muttered, sweat running down his face. He gritted his teeth. "We can't outrun them." Kalira turned her glowing eyes toward the screen. The fleet's red lights reflected in her pupils like fire. "Then we fight." Darius whipped his head around to face her. "Fight with what?" "This ship is a tin can with wings. One hit in the wrong place and we're both dead." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Not if you let me do what I was made to do." He stared at her. He knew what she meant, and it terrified him. Another explosion rocked the hull. Sparks rained down from the ceiling. The ship groaned under the pressure. Kalira stepped forward, her massive frame filling the cockpit. Her voice was iron. "Open the bay doors again." Darius's mind raced. The image of her ripping ships apart with her bare hands was still burned into him. She was a weapon, a living storm. But could even she stand against a fleet? The ship jolted again, harder this time. A console burst, flames licking the wall. "No time," Kalira growled. "Trust me," Darius cursed under his breath. Trust. That was the word again. He slammed the command. The bay doors opened. The wind howled through the corridors, pulling air toward the void. Kalira moved with purpose, her body glowing faintly in the starlight pouring inside. She did not look back at him. She crouched. Muscles coiled like thunder, then leapt into the black once more. Darius clenched the controls, eyes wide. God help us. Outside, the fleet adjusted. The hunters locked weapons on the lone giantess floating in the void. And then she moved. Kalira's body glowed brighter, her skin reflecting silver fire. She twisted through the black, dodging energy bolts faster than Darius believed possible for her size. Her fist slammed into the nearest ship, tearing through armor like it was paper. Engines flared, explosions rippled, debris scattered into the void. She ripped weapons free from another vessel, turning them against their own fleet. Plasma fire lit the sky, hunters breaking apart in chaos. In the cockpit, Darius's jaw dropped. She's using their guns. The Giantess caught hold of a cruiser's wing, her body spinning as she hurled the entire craft into another. The collision sent both ships into burning wreckage. Alarm sounded again. Not from his ship, this time from theirs. The hunter's formation was broken. Panic spread. Kalira's deep voice crackled over the ship's comms, sharp and commanding. "Pilot, push forward." "Through the gap." Darius blinked, hands frozen. Then he snapped out of it. Right. He slammed the thrusters, his ship shooting ahead while Kalira tore through their flank. The hunters tried to regroup, but it was too late. Their prey was already slipping past them. Still, not all fled. A massive carrier at the center of the fleet turned, engines glowing bright. Its weapons locked onto Darius's ship. Kalira saw it. Her eyes narrowed. She roared, the sound echoing across the comms like thunder, and she charged. She hit the carrier with both fists, tearing at its armor. Blinding explosions rippled across its hull as she ripped open the belly of the beast. The carrier twisted, broke, and finally erupted in fire, lighting the black sky like a dying star. Darius shielded his eyes from the blast, his ship tumbling from the shockwave. His heart hammered. Impossible. She's impossible. When the light faded, she was still there, floating among the wreckage, silver skin glowing against the darkness. Slowly, she drifted back toward his ship, catching hold of the bay doors before pulling herself inside. The air hissed as the doors sealed shut. The alarms went quiet. And then she stood before him again, towering, her chest rising with heavy breaths. Darius stared at her, unable to speak. His mind struggled to find words for what he had just witnessed. Finally, he whispered, "You're unstoppable." Her eyes met his, cold and tired. "No, I am hunted. That is not the same." Darius swallowed hard. She was right. For every ship she destroyed, more would come. They would never stop chasing her, and now, chasing him too. But as he looked at her, standing tall and unbroken in his ship, he knew one thing. Whatever storm was coming, he was already inside it. The choice of survival. The wreckage of the fleet drifted far behind them, broken ships glowing faintly like dying stars. Darius's vessel limped through the dark, its engines whining, shields cracked but still alive. Inside the ship, the silence was heavy. No alarms now. No gunfire. Only the hum of machines and the faint hiss of damaged pipes. Darius slumped into the pilot's chair, his body aching, his mind burning with questions he couldn't push away. He had seen her destroy an entire fleet with her hands like some living storm given shape, and yet here she was, standing in his cargo bay, silent once again. He rose slowly, his boots dragging across the metal floor. When he reached the bay, Kalira sat in the corner, knees bent, her giant frame hunched low. The fire of battle was gone. What remained was something darker, an emptiness that scared him more than her power. For a moment he didn't speak. He only studied her, wondering if she was thinking of the lives she had ended, or if to her they meant nothing. Finally he broke the silence. "You saved us, again!" Her silver eyes lifted, tired and sharp. "I saved myself. You were only beside me." Darius gave a bitter laugh. "You really know how to make a guy feel special?" But she didn't smile. She never did. Her voice dropped low. "You don't understand what you carry, human. By keeping me alive, you put yourself in the path of death." He crossed his arms. "That's not news. I figured it out back at the auction." Her head turned fully now, her gaze locking onto him. "No, you don't see the whole truth." She rose to her full height, towering above him like a living mountain. Shadows stretched long across the bay. Her voice carried weight like thunder. "My kind were not born. We were made, forged in the laboratories of the Car Dominion. Our bodies built for war, our minds sharpened for killing. Stronger than armies, faster than fleets. We were victory given flesh." Darius's stomach knotted. He had guessed she was bred for battle, but hearing it from her lips made the air heavier. She continued, her voice bitter. "But we were too much, too powerful. The Dominion feared we could not be controlled. They refused to let us breed. They ended our lines. And when fear grew greater than their need, they slaughtered us." Her fists clenched at her sides, metal groaning under her grip. "I am the last. The last of a warbreed that was never allowed to live." The words sank deep into Darius. He had thought she was a victim. He hadn't realized she was also a ghost, carrying the weight of an entire dead species. For a moment, neither spoke. The ship hummed softly, a fragile sound against the storm between them. Finally, Darius said quietly, "So what now? You want me to throw you back into the fire? Let them finish the job?" Her eyes narrowed. "That might be the only way you live. They will not stop hunting me, and you are too small to stand against them." Darius stepped closer, anger flashing across his face. "Maybe I am small, but leaving you to die isn't survival. It's cowardice." Kalira's eyes widened slightly. Not in fear, she had none, but in surprise. No one had ever spoken to her like that. She looked down at him, this fragile human standing against the shadow of her destruction. Slowly, her voice softened. "Why do you fight for me?" "You know what I am, a weapon." "A monster." Darius's chest rose and fell, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. No, you're more than what they made you. You're not meat for their tables. You're not a tool for their wars. You're alive. That's enough. For the first time, her lips trembled, almost forming words she didn't know how to say. But before she could answer, the sensors in the cockpit screamed again. Darius spun toward the sound, his stomach sinking. The screen showed new red dots, ships. More than before. A wave of hunters spreading across the stars. Kalira's voice was quiet but certain. They have found us again. Darius gritted his teeth. Then we run again, she shook her head. There is no running. Not forever. He looked at her, desperation burning in his eyes. Then what do we do? Her gaze met his, steady and cold. We choose survival or surrender. The words hung in the air like a blade, and as the fleet closed in on their tiny ship, Darius knew the choice was coming. Not just for her, not just for him, but for both of them together. Humanity stands tall, the stars lit with red as the enemy fleet closed around them. More ships than Darius could count filled the dark, their engines glowing like a ring of fire. The hunters had not just returned, they had come prepared. An armada. Darius's ship trembled under the weight of their scanners. Warnings screamed across the control screen. Dozens of weapons locked onto them. Escape was impossible. Darius gripped the console, sweat dripping down his temple. We can't fight this many. Not even you can. Kalira stood behind him, her massive form looming in the small cockpit. Her silver eyes glowed faintly as she studied the fleet. Calm. Cold. As if she had known this was coming. They will not stop until I am gone, she said. This is the end they want. Darius spun toward her. So that's it? You're just going to give up? Her jaw tightened. If I fall, maybe they will let you live. His laugh was bitter, sharp. You still don't get it, do you? They're not here for just you. They'll take me too. They'll take my ship, my bones, my everything. There's no mercy in them. Her eyes lingered on him, unreadable. Then why save me? Why fight at all, human? Darius met her gaze, his voice steady despite the storm around them. Because someone has to. Because even one voice, even one stand matters. And if that's all I can do before I die, then so be it. The silence between them was heavy. Then slowly something shifted in Kalira's eyes. Not coldness, not emptiness. Something new. Respect. The fleet began to move. Their formation tightened, weapons powering up. Plasma glowed along the hulls like veins of fire. The hunters were ready to erase them. Kalira stepped forward, her massive hand gripping the back of Darius's chair. Her voice was thunder. Then we fight together. Darius blinked, then grinned faintly. Now that's more like it. He slammed the controls. The old ship's engines roared, throwing them forward. The first volley of plasma bolts streaked toward them, but Kalira braced against the ship's frame. Her body glowed, energy rippling across her skin. The blast struck and bent away. Darius's eyes went wide. You're shielding us? Her voice shook with strain. Not for long. Strike now. He didn't hesitate. He dove the ship through the narrowest gap, weaving between fire like a thread through needles. The old vessel screamed, metal tearing but still held. Kalira's roar filled the cockpit as she channeled her strength outward, deflecting shot after shot. Every bolt that should have ended them turned aside, scattering into the void. Darius gritted his teeth, weaving them closer to the enemy lines. If you can give me one opening. Just one. Kalira slammed her fist into the floor, the ship shaking under her raw power. Her silver eyes blazed brighter than ever. Then I will break it for you. Outside, the fleet closed ranks. The flagship at the center, a massive beast of a ship, larger than any city, charged its main cannon. The glow of its weapon lit half the sky, Kalira's eyes fixed on it. Her voice was low, fierce. That one. Kill it and the others will scatter. Darius's stomach dropped. That thing's the size of a continent. But her stare burned with certainty. Trust me. The word struck him harder than the cannon's glow. Trust. Always trust. He took a deep breath, tightened his grip, and pushed the engines to their limit. The ship screamed forward, heading straight into the heart of the armada. Alarms blared. The flagship's weapon charged, plasma building into a sun about to explode. Kalira stepped to the bay doors. Her towering frame filled the space like a god of war. She turned her head back toward Darius. Her voice was softer now, but strong. You gave me freedom. Now I give you survival. Before he could stop her, the doors opened. She leapt into the void one last time. The flagship fired. A beam of pure plasma streaked toward the human ship, brighter than anything Darius had ever seen. It should have torn him into nothing, but it never reached. Kalira struck the beam itself, her body glowing white-hot, her roar shaking the comms. She pushed against the impossible, her flesh burning, her armor cracking. The beam bent, split, turned back. The flagship's cannon tore into its own fleet. The explosion consumed half their formation in a firestorm brighter than a star. Hunters screamed across the comms, their formation broken, their will shattered. Ships scattered in panic, fleeing into the black. Darius's ship spun from the shockwave, tumbling through the chaos. He fought the controls, heart hammering. "Kalira!
Where are you?"
No answer. He scanned the viewport, eyes searching the burning wreckage. For a moment he thought she was gone, burned away in the light. Then he saw her, floating among the debris, her body torn, her skin cracked with glowing lines of energy. But still alive. Barely. Darius pulled the ship close, dragging her inside with what little strength the bay still had. The doors sealed shut, the alarms fading. She collapsed on the floor, massive and broken, but her eyes still opened. Faint. Silver. Darius knelt beside her, his voice shaking. "You saved us. You saved me." Her lips curled, the faintest ghost of a smile. "No, human. We saved each other." Her eyes closed, but her chest still rose with breath. Alive. The wreckage of the fleet drifted into silence. The stars were quiet again. In the cockpit, Darius sat at the controls, the Giantess resting in the bay behind him. He stared into the endless dark ahead and whispered, "One human stood." And one Giantess remembered what freedom meant. The engines roared, carrying them forward, two survivors against the galaxy. Together,